Just over a week ago, I made a video talking about Elon Musk and his slightly odd signals that he might be starting a new social media company, he might be joining an already present social media company, or he might even be buying Twitter itself. Color me surprised then when just a few hours ago we got news that Elon Musk literally just bought 9% of Twitter in what I suspect is probably just the start. Today, in this hastily put together video, because I fully expect this story to move very quickly, I'm going to explain what happened a week ago, what just happened today, why this is all going on, and what we can expect in the future. So what exactly happened just over a week ago? Well, Elon came out with a couple of tweets which started with this one: "Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle?" Over 2 million votes, with over 70% of those people, that's 1.4 million people, thinking Twitter does not adhere to the principle of free speech. Elon then tweeted, "The consequences of this poll will be important. Please vote carefully." Then he said, given that Twitter serves as the de facto public town square, failing to adhere to free speech principles fundamentally undermines democracy. What should be done? And finally, he said, "Is a new platform necessary?" Now, in my opinion, it wasn't too hard to see what Elon was trying to say there, and it helped that the poll was substantially supporting his view as well. Elon is unhappy with the state of Twitter and social media as a whole, and he thinks it's time for a change, and it seems he wants to be that someone who institutes that change. In the video I made last week, I basically outlined a few different courses of action for Elon. The first was for him to join a competitor to Twitter, a company like Truth or Parler, which is trying to basically run a Twitter that allows free speech. The benefit to this is that Elon would be able to bring millions of users into that platform. The platforms themselves are not as developed as something like Twitter, so Elon could buy a pretty huge stake in them for far less money than he could with Twitter. But one of the reasons Twitter is so important is because it has so many damn users. And it's practically mandatory for every journalist in the world to have and frequently use a Twitter account, and Parler or Truth Social, they just don't have that same advantage. Next, Elon could literally start his own social media company. He has huge amounts of funds, so he could control it and own it outright. He could have complete control over the direction it moves in and make it his down to a T. Twitter also isn't actually that complicated an app to compete with on a technical basis. It isn't like TikTok with a $100 billion algorithm to make sure it works successfully. It's pretty much just some standard UI and then some really underwhelming features like Twitter Spaces, which, let's be frank, are pretty damn awful. The problem with this idea is the age-old chicken versus the egg problem. Elon's platform could only compete with Twitter if it had millions of active users, but to get those millions of active users, it needs to be a solid alternative, and that requires millions of active users. Elon's position as a public figure and one of the most famous people in the world could aid that situation for sure, but it would probably struggle to actually get to the point where Twitter is today. Finally, the other option I laid out was that Elon could simply buy his way into Twitter itself and try to change the company for the better. It's actually not a very expensive company as far as tech goes, and has basically failed to capitalize on the tech boom, unlike something like Facebook. Before Elon bought his Twitter stake, it was only worth around $30 billion, which means Elon can buy a pretty big share, considering just how much cash he has these days after selling so much Tesla in late 2021. Now, the reasons I gave that might be putting Elon off buying into Twitter itself was that the platform is already corrupted and Elon would struggle to take full control. He is a notable opponent of Twitter's current CEO Parag, and he posted this meme just a few months ago, likening him to Stalin purging his opponents in the Soviet Union to Jack Dorsey being purged from Twitter and erased from Twitter history. Now, why does Elon hate Parag? Well, pretty much simply because censorship on Twitter has increased massively since Parag became CEO. It literally turned up a gear overnight, and it's clear as day that it is Parag's doing. He's choosing to try and run Twitter for profit as effectively as possible, and in his mind, that means pandering to the government in charge by stifling free speech. So that's the direction he's taken that company in. Now, I would not be surprised at all, now that we know of Elon's 9% stake in the company, if we see Parag replaced with someone else within a couple of years, and I might even go so far as to say that might actually be inevitable. Now, would Elon seek to become CEO and run the company himself? I seriously doubt that. He probably has his hands full running the myriad of other companies he owns, and CEO is quite a hands-on role. I'd imagine the influence that he desires is far more broad-based than day-to-day runnings, and for that, being CEO isn't actually necessary for him. Now, I know what some people are going to say here, that this is a 9% stake of Twitter that Elon now owns, but it's a passive stake, meaning that Elon has no intention of changing how the company runs itself. But let's be honest, Elon has never been one to follow the rules, and I simply do not believe he bought up 9% of the company as a passive investment, especially after what he's said regarding Twitter and free speech in recent times. I expect we also might be hearing from Jack Dorsey a little bit more in the near future as well. He's been relatively outspoken about being unhappy with the state of things, blaming himself largely for the result of Twitter today, which is fair as he ran the company for 6 of the last 7 years. Dorsey recently tweeted, "The days of Usenet, IRC, the web, even email were amazing. Centralizing discovery and identity into corporations really damaged the internet. I realize I'm partially to blame and regret it." Now, Dorsey and Elon are apparently actually quite close, which makes sense, and this could be some sort of mission by the two of them to try and take back some control and put Twitter back on the right track. Together, they control over 11% of the shares. Elon is the single largest shareholder of the company, and they both have significant voting control, and if I remember correctly, Twitter has straight voting for a 3-year staggered board. So actually, Elon should be able to capture at least one seat on the board at the next election. There's also the fact that Elon has millions of fans who have already started buying up Twitter, sending its share price up 27% in pre-market trading, and those people will have voting rights too, and almost certainly vote in whichever way Elon wants them to. In 3 years' time, if Parag isn't already ousted by then, there's a very good chance that Elon is actually able to handpick a new CEO. Now, to be clear, there are ways to fight this kind of takeover. Something like a poison pill strategy could work, where the current majority shareholders threaten to kill the company by diluting the shares a ridiculous amount in an attempt to get Elon to walk away, or they could try something similar. But this is a pretty drastic measure, and it isn't necessarily going to go this direction. Now, trying to put aside various predictions for the future, I did mention offhand how the share price of Twitter skyrocketed on this announcement by a monumental 27% pre-market, and right now, as markets have opened, it's up 21% from yesterday. Now, you might expect me to say that this is entirely irrational, like what I've said about certain share splits recently, including one led by Elon, but actually, there is some logic behind this share price jump. Twitter is a very poorly run tech company, and it should have grown at the same sort of rate as Facebook, and if it were run correctly over the last decade, it would be worth a minimum of 10 times as much as it is today. The reality is that Dorsey just wasn't a great CEO, and he didn't have a brilliant vision for the company. He was distracted by his other pet project, Square, which is now Block, and never really managed to capitalize on the monumental growth of social media that he should have been able to grow with like Facebook did. Elon Musk, on the other hand, is infamous as an incredible entrepreneur, and for good reason, and there's a very strong chance that this is the start of a takeover bid by Elon that would see him change the direction of the company, yes, towards the defense of free speech, but also in the direction of more earnings and greater growth. Now, does that alone, this idea, justify the increase in value of Twitter by $7 billion after Elon only bought $3 billion worth of shares? Well, there, I just don't know. That's a very hard thing to judge, and I don't really know how you should price this news right now. In a year or so, when we can see clearly what's coming a little bit better, it'll be easier to tell, but right now, this price action could be insane, or it could be actually rather reserved. We just have to wait and see to find out what Elon has planned in store. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to bless the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content like this, then check out our Patreon and join our community of investors. You get access to our Discord, loads of exclusive content like insight into my portfolio and buy and sell alerts for all my own investments. There's a link in the description to masterworks.io, a site that allows you to buy fractional shares of art from world-famous artists like Banksy, which can be a great way to diversify your portfolio with non-market correlated assets. It is completely free to sign up, so if that sounds interesting, then make sure to check it out. There's also a link in the description to BlockFi, which will give you up to $250 in free Bitcoin when you use it. You can also get 9% interest on stablecoins like USDC, which is a far higher rate than you get from any savings account these days. Thank you for watching, stay stoic, until next time.